I call this public meeting of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Welcome everyone to the report session of our meeting. We do have the oral session at this time, and we do have some individuals who have signed up to speak to the board and address us on two different matters. So thanks for coming tonight to share your opinion. Before we start, a few rules of order regarding the public comment portion of the meeting. According to board policy, each speaker has 5 minutes to speak. We'll have our board secretary, Donna Webb, keeping time tonight. She will hold up time cards showing the time you have remaining. If the item is not on the board agenda, the board may not ask or answer questions or make any comment regarding what is said. Please note that to comply with FERPA laws on student privacy, you may not mention the student by name. Additionally, according to board policy, you may not make derogatory comments about any individual staff member, either by name or title. Should you need to file a complaint, you may do this through our formal grievance policy outlined in board policy. So thank you for coming to speak to us. The first one, we're going to go with Daniel J. Bennett to speak to us about the TAD election. Mr. Bennett.
Hi. My name is Daniel J. Bennett. Good to see you again, Board President Newsom and Superintendent Chadwell. 2 years ago, I was here addressing this board, asking for your votes. I'm actually on the ballot, and I'm not supposed to be. I was nominated by Haslett, and I was up at Haslett. I presented the resolution. I think someone presented a resolution to this body also. I think Cunningham. And so they sent my letter to my junk mail. And by the time I realized it was important junk mail, I made the ballot. I'm not running. I have no intentions to run. That's the first thing I want to clear up. The second thing I'd like to talk about are the nominations. If I could just quickly pass this out to each member. This is the current nomination list. I don't know if I grab it enough. I'm gonna have to go back to my.
We can
Yeah,
share.
we can share.
Yeah, we can
Sure.
share.
Yeah,
Well, I'm gonna
Yeah,
represent
we
as
can
I
share.
speak, so.
Okay.
You want me to know that?
Oh, I think I have it now.
Okay.
I got one for myself.
All right.
Okay. It seems that Mark Wood isn't running this year, and the first thing I want to draw your attention is the nomination for board of directors. You'll see my name at the top, you can strike it, okay? And there's two that should stand out to you, a John Fagan and a Glaspie. Now, Glaspie and Fagan ran in 2011 and won. They were part of the debacle when approving the software. And why they're coming back to ask for your votes again, I'm unsure, especially how harmed this body was in 2015. So I just wanted to point that out. That's their lineage. Secondly, let's move to the second page, because this also segues into the election. I did an open records request with TAD. That's on page 2. And I asked, because I thought the resolution was going to be put to every governing body for consideration. Well, under the code, Mr. Law believes he didn't have to do it, and he's right. But once again, I'm trying to give this body representation at the board level, and I had a resolution that I thought would partly meet that goal. And Mr. Law thought, you can read, Tarrant Appraisal District has no public information responsive to your request. Please note that the Texas Property Code does not require the Colleyville resolution to be placed on a ballot or be otherwise distributed. So, whether this body feels the resolution was a good idea or a bad idea, Mr. Law doesn't think it's a good idea. At least he doesn't at least want to send it to you for a vote. That makes it very cumbersome within the property code to pass a resolution to effectively change the way we vote by having 48 entities separately vote between June 30th and October 1st. The second is a 209 letter that I've included from Mr. Fagan, and you can read it, but what I wanted to point out to you is the top sentence that he wrote. He actually signed it on page 2. It says, I'm writing to you concerning the open position that our friend John Eubanks is vacating. John's endorsed me to replace him. It's almost like they pass a torch on the board of directors. I don't know what it is about these people feeling they're entitled to have consideration based if they know somebody, our friend. This is about representation. And Ms. Webb, I know you were, back in 2017, you were a staunch supporter of transparency, accountability, and due diligence. And I thought he was gonna be here. He lives in South Lake. Gary Losada, he's on that front page. He's stuck in traffic. He cannot be here. The resolution's on the back page in case you never got a copy. And that resolution states basically that everybody votes from December 8th to December 14th. That way, nobody can table their vote and wait till everybody else votes and then decide who gets to affix the board. But Mr. Law thinks that that's not a good idea. That's one of the problems. Now, Gary Losada got 1 minute. He's a master's education. He's been an assistant to a superintendent. He's been an assistant to a city manager. And he was on the ARB board from 09 to 15 for 6 years. He had his tenure, and once you do 3 terms, you're done. He knows commercial, and he knows residential, frontwards and backwards, the property code. He's not a realtor. He doesn't care about closing on houses. He cares about representing you. And he's not here right now. And he probably walked through that door in any minute. So I want to thank you for your time. I know we can't converse back and forth, but thank you.
Thank you. Did you get a copy? All right, our second speaker is Jason Kennedy. He is speaking about a Pacific agenda item 6D. And Jason, you have the same 5 minutes, starting whenever you get to the podium. So.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Jason Kennedy, and I'm an attorney and represent 308 Construction. I just want to speak to you today on the termination of convenience. It's on the agenda for today, just for a few minutes. And my clients, Alan Heiser and Mr. Ryan Davenport, just walked in with 308 Construction. And I know this is an important project to y'all, and it's an important project to us. And the termination for convenience, you know, we're not going to challenge. Obviously, the district's got the legal right to terminate for convenience. Can't really challenge that, but I just want this board to know a couple things. One, 308 Construction is ready, willing, and able to finish this project. We think it's about 90% complete. If we hadn't been told to stop work in September, I think 16 of the 18 schools could have been complete by now, but we've been told to stop work September 20. 308 wants to finish these projects. And really, they've got, you know, Alan and Ryan have been in this business a long time. They take a lot of pride in their work. They want to finish these projects. They've been using their best efforts. There was a meeting September 13th, provided a recovery schedule. Then a week later, they worked that week. A week later, just told to stop work. We haven't heard a thing since. Part of the frustration, we haven't gotten the information. We haven't known what's going on until we saw this on the agenda. We've been asking for just a meeting to go through the issues on the project. We haven't gotten that. So, and that's, you know, it may be a foregone conclusion at this point, but if it's not, 308 really wants to work through these issues and finish these projects. The second quick issue I want to bring up is, aside from that, 308's got an outstanding pay application for July work that is unpaid, $715,000. It was approved by the architect August 8th. Has not been paid. Under the contract, it was due September 23rd, over a month ago. I have not been able to get any information on this. I've been talking to the district's attorney, Mr. Myers. It's been radio silence. I can't, under the contract, the district's required to tell us within 21 days if they don't approve of, if they disagree with an architect certification, they have to give reasons, specific reasons why they disagree with the certification. That hasn't happened. We've made numerous requests to try to figure out why hasn't that pay application been paid, because the district's also holding That's for July work. We've got August, September work, and 5% retainage still outstanding. So to the extent there's any issues, I mean, there's other money there that can be held, and not even I think, you know, just in my personal opinion, you know, from what I've seen, it seems like at least, I don't understand why at least a partial payment of any undisputed amounts on that have not been paid. We haven't been told why not. And, you know, 308 has worked hard. There have been issues, but 308 has worked hard, and the subcontractors have worked hard for this district. And we can't pay our subcontractors if we're not paid. And so they deserve to be paid at least some undisputed amount that everybody can agree on. But I have been unable to get any, again, even to find out the reasons for the non-payment at this point. So I just wanted to let the board know those things. We're here. We'd like to move forward with these projects, and we're here to talk. If anybody wants to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you. That is an agenda item, so if anybody has a question, I don't really want to debate it at this time, but if somebody has a question they would like to ask, free to. Okay. You know when it comes up in the agenda, so item 6D, we can get to it, all right. All right, that concludes our oral speakers, and I see that, yes, he just walked in the door. I think I saw him sit down there by you, Mr. Bennett. Welcome to the meeting. You can't really say, you could sure introduce yourself, it's fine with us, but not really any more than that.
I just introduced myself and that's it?
Yeah, yeah, because you've already missed the time to speak, to sign up, sorry that you missed it, and he took your whole there was 5 minutes that was already used, so.
Okay.
But we're sure welcome to introduce yourself.
Can I give you a handout anyway?
Sure, absolutely.
Sometimes modern technology is not as great as people think with directions.
Thank you.
You need my address also, just my name?
Just your name is fine.
Okay, my name is Gary Lasada and the packet is self-explanatory.
Okay, we appreciate you coming. All right, our next report is, the report to the superintendent is the finance report and planning for the fall bond. Mr. Shealy.
The first item that we have has to do with the bond issue that is coming up. I've got Josh McLaughlin here from BOK, and I have his presentation up here, and I'd like him to come up and talk. I've got a couple of thoughts when he started.
Good evening.
Evening.
Pleasure to see you all again. I'm gonna make this relatively brief and hopefully painless, as I see you have more fun, exciting stuff ahead of you.
Yes.
Before we talk about bond capacity and what you can sell this fall, just talking a little bit about how you've managed your portfolio in the past through introducing concepts like variable rate bonds and refinancing your debt at a savings when the interest rates have allowed. Over the years, since 2005, a combination of those financing techniques have saved taxpayers over $105 million in interest cost. I'm gonna say that number again, even though there's probably no people here over 105 million. When we talk about tax rates, as you all know, the Board of Trustees sets 2 tax rates every year, the M&O, maintenance and operations, the day-to-day staffing of the district, and then the interest and sinking fund, which is what we'll focus on tonight, for the payment of voter-approved bonds. Currently, you're at 1.518 is the total tax rate, which is actually a decline this year of 2.2 cents, helping taxpayers out. In terms of bond capacity, the way to view this is bond capacity is just a function of
One, the state mandated 50-cent test, which is under the state law, before you sell bonds, any new bonds, you have to prove to the Attorney General you can service your existing bonds plus new bonds from a maximum tax rate of 50 cents. So as a function of that and your current tax rate. So if you look at this graph, what is bond capacity? The reality is red. In the red is what are the projected revenues from your tax rate at 45 cents. Blue would be your existing bond payments. The green would be any remaining left over. These are bond payments that you could put in through the sale of new bonds or your bond capacity. So the way to look at this is at 45 cents, you do have existing bond capacity to sell additional bonds. One of the main drivers of bond capacity is the structure of your existing debt. Currently, you have just over $604 million outstanding. The bonds are repaid over a 30-year period. Currently, you have just under $596 million of authorized but unissued bonds remaining to be sold, and you're currently rated AA- by both S&P and Fitch, which are great, outstanding ratings. This gives you a look at not only your outstanding callable bonds, or bonds outstanding, but your outstanding callable bonds as well. So out of the $600 million you have outstanding, 518 are callable prior to final maturity. You can prepay these bonds prior to final maturity, or when interest rates allow, is refinance those bonds at a savings. I highlighted the first three, only to point out those bonds are callable next year. We will be back here in the first quarter to talk to you about potentially refinancing some of these bonds at a savings. In terms of your existing debt portfolio, the lion's share is fixed rate bonds, over 91%. You do have a variable rate issue outstanding, roughly 8.8%. From a rating agency standpoint, we'd like to see no more than 25%. So you are diversified and well within prudent debt management standards. You've seen this capacity before, or this graph before. This is the bond buyer index. It gives you a general indication of what municipal interest rates are doing. And as you can see, it's just an absolute horrible time to sell bonds because they're near a 50-year low, right? So I will tell you our view of what interest rates are going to do. Keep in mind, this is from our economist, who's much like a meteorologist. He's right half the time, wrong half the time. Still gets to keep his job low. So from our standpoint, the reason rates are so low right now, obviously the U.S.-China trade war, tariffs, there are negative sovereign yields around the world, of over $13 trillion of funds having negative yields. You do hear the potential recession word out there. I'm not sure I relatively buy that, but it is out there in terms of the marketplace. The Federal Reserve is supposed to meet this week. It's highly anticipated that they will drop the Fed funds rate another 0.25% this week. Now, next year we're going into a presidential election. Typically, the Fed does not act during presidential election years. So we ought to see rates stay relatively low. However, when you're looking at a 50-year low, this is an excellent time to be selling bonds. In terms of your valuation, this is the biggest driver in terms of your overall borrowing cost, because your tax base is what ultimately allows you to repay that debt. Currently, your taxable assessed valuation for this year is just over $10 billion. This past year was the highest growth over the last decade, at almost $1.4 billion, or 16%. For the last 5 years, you've grown $715 million per year, or roughly 9%. And if we look at it in a much longer view, which we typically do, try to be conservative, good economies and bad economies, the last 10 years you've averaged growth of about $394 million, or just over 5%. In terms of bond capacity, what we wanted to show you is the impact of a $60 million bond program, which would take care of sort of your cash flow over the next 12 months. And then we wanted to give you two different scenarios. Given that you're at a 45-cent IMS tax rate, how many bonds could you issue today given certain assumptions? And then what would be your maximum amount of bonds you could a 50-cent tax rate. In terms of assumptions, we've assumed that you would sell these bonds at current market rates plus 25 basis points. Again, since we're not selling bonds today, we want to have a little conservatism in here. The bonds would be repaid over a 30-year period, which the district has historically done. In terms of value growth, we've only assumed 2 years of value growth. And the reason being, when you have $600 million roughly of bonds to sell, we want future growth to pay for some of those future bonds. Unfortunately, given your wealthy students, you won't get any money from the IFA or EBA program, so we have not assumed state funding assistance. In terms of value growth, again, only 2 years at the historical 10-year average of 393. Again, trying to be conservative. If I knew exactly how much your values can grow, it'd be a much different story. In terms of the results, if you sold $60 million of bonds today, the interest rate would roughly be 3.46%. Think about that from an historical standpoint. You're selling debt at less than 3.5%. There would be no impact to your current INS tax rate of 45 cents. In fact, in 2 years, we would be able to stair-step that down by almost 5 cents. And you would see additional step downs in your tax rates over time. Your net bond payments on the $60 million bond sale would be roughly $92 million. So from an historical basis, when you think about selling 30-year debt, typically interest doubles with the principal balance. And you're really paying about 50% of it. That's the value of selling at such low interest rates. In terms of 45 cents, you can certainly sell roughly $148 million and maintain that 45-cent INS tax rate. Or if you wanted to look at your maximum bond capacity at 50 cents, that would be roughly $245 million in today's market, based upon these assumptions. I'm gonna stop right there really quickly and ask if you have any questions about that information.
What would be the, I know you said not paying off any bonds. We have capacity there, as you pointed out, even this year, about 100, not quite 100. Is there an advantage to paying off some bonds that would also free up capacity? How does that compare, that comparison work?
So the current year, because you're generating more revenue than you are expenditures, you have the ability to take a portion of that money and prepay bonds. The alternative is when we sell new bonds, we could put a new payment in on the new bonds. The reality is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other in terms of capacity. Now, saying that, that's part of the reason we're only growing your values at the 10-year historical average, right? So in the future, as your values grow faster than what we are projecting, you're going to be able to take that excess money and start prepaying down those bonds. That is something that we would highly recommend in the future.
Because if we have $596 million of bonds to sell, we have to work that capacity in, looking 10 years in the future, let's just say, probably quicker than that. So does that fit with the same projection? You
Yes,
have to have
sir,
growth.
Because keep in mind, we're only growing your values for
Right.
2 years here. The reality is you're going to sell these bonds over the next 5 to 10 years,
Right.
and your values will continue, well, hopefully,
Right.
continue to grow over time. If your values stop growing, the reality is you probably don't need to issue those bonds.
And we hope that's reality.
And I hope reality is your values grow each and every single year.
Yeah.
So if we did the 50-cent max, we wouldn't actually start, so our tax rate still wouldn't go up if our TAVs grew by the time we spent the bond money.
So under the 50-cent scenario, this assumes that you would actually raise your tax rate next year to 50 cents. The reason the tax rate would go down is if your values grow more than 2 years, right? Then it would start to go down. But under this scenario, if you're going to sell $245 million of bonds, your tax rate would go up to 50 cents starting next year. It would be there until your values start to come back, or grow faster than what we projected. Again, this is supposed to give you an outside look of what you could sell today.
So the only way we could do the bond capacity would be scenario 2 that would not make the tax rate go up.
In today's marketplace, yes, sir.
Yes.
That is correct.
And if what you're saying is true, Josh, I mean, and you're looking at previous years of what happens in a presidential year. If the market still stays close to as low as it is right now, fast forward 6 months, we make an issuance based on scenario 2, nothing would stop us from reconsidering an issuance for next year. When the TAVs come in, we have better numbers, and then we want to do another issuance to still stay under 45, say we grow more than the 2 years that he mentioned. So personally, as I look at this, we wanted this for, so you would be able to see what all the options are that are available. Scenario two keeps within what we've said before, is that we would stay within the 45 cents, and which is what we were when the bond passed, which is.
That's
the
what we
requirement.
told her.
Correct.
That's what we told them.
Correct. But we wanted you to see the total capacity there, but again, nothing would stop us from going again in the summer after we have better TAVs to have another issuance.
So, and just to, compound on top of that is, again, we've only assumed $394 million growth for 2 years. So essentially, that's $800 million. Last year alone, you grew $1.4 billion. So come next August, we could very well be in a different position where you could issue more bonds at 45 cents. And
So-
that tax rate.
In the next TAVs, next May or June, whenever those come in, if we had another year close to this year, then that would go ahead and allow, we could probably then go to the 50-cent max and still not have to raise taxes if the TAVs come in like that again.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You could probably get very close to that $250 million number without having to raise your tax rate above 45 cents.
How does that match up with our current bond, with our current construction projects that, as we roll them out?
No, that's
Is that enough
way
money?
in excess of our anticipated draw schedule.
Okay.
The issue is, will we have the capacity to issue the bonds when we have to build Eagle Mountain High School? That's been my focus. At this point in time, given what comes in next May, that capacity will be achieved, and potentially we could accelerate other projects, which would result in a fairly significant savings from the authorization.
And that's one reason why we wanted to present it to you, what it would look like with 100 more million. But that means that we would have to do those projects within that period of time. I don't think that necessarily has to be, a decision has to be made now, that could be made this summer. And looking at the chart on page 17, if, we don't know that it'll stay that low, but but looking at what next year could be, we don't expect this to rise significantly in the next 6 months.
I don't know, we certainly think the bonds are going to stay in a nice trading range. When you look at it from a historical standpoint, obviously, the probability is rates will be higher in the future than lower. But that's not to say that, interest rates can have another rally from where they are right now. But we would anticipate, up 25 basis points, down 25 basis points, but certainly not up 100% or 100 basis points or down 100 basis points.
All right.
What we'd like is some direction, because we'd like to come back next month, excuse me, with a parameters order to go out by the end of the year. From what I'm hearing, we're looking at the maximum to maintain a 45-cent rate, or we could go for the 60 million. I would kind of like some feedback or consensus as to what we're looking at.
You have some more, just tell us.
The rest of this, the numbers behind it are on the few pages that are eye exam, so I won't make you go through it, other than focus on the second to last column on each one of these. These are your projected tax rates, and again, once we get past 2022, when we stop rolling your values, your tax rates are set. the reality is your values will grow more than 2 years. So you will generate additional bond
I
value.
think is scenario two with the 45-cent max. And then that does give us the flexibility, if we want to move projects up, then we have all of that savings from the inflation numbers that are put in the bond.
That seems to be consistent.
That's my recommendation, because the construction cost savings, and we've already looked at some projects for summer 2020, and what we can have done within that period of time, and if we had that additional capacity to be able to do those projects sooner, would come into a savings. And some of these projects are ones that have to be done over the summer, like, for example, fields that are that are there, that have to be done over the summer, and so if we don't do them next summer, then it's summer 21, so.
So the timetable that's there up now, which is on page 17 of the presentation and 27, I think, in the board packet,
So
would be our goal.
that would certainly be the goal right now. I will tell you, typically when we adopt the parameters order, we have 180 days to get the financing done. We're trying right now to close everything before the district goes on Christmas break. Depending on market conditions between now and then, if rates start to rally or go down more, we may want to wait till the start of the new year. Typically, there's more cash on the sidelines at the beginning of the year, which may give the district a little bit lower rate. But best case scenario, we would try to come back to the board on November 18th, their next meeting, adopt the parameters order, have everything in place by the end of November. That way we can price early December and close before you go on.
Is there any reason we need to close before the end of the year? We're on a fiscal year.
We can do an intent to reimburse, which I plan on bringing back in addition to the parameters order. There's no point going to market if we don't think the conditions are good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sheehy, the budget status.
Moving here. The budget presentation, there's a couple things that I wanted to throw out that we're working with on HB3, which has still been a challenge. Some things are going well, some things are still completely up in the air. TEA is issuing a series of 30-minute videos that explain their process or thinking behind where they're going. They still have not issued rules for comment in several key areas, including whether or not we're a fast growth district. We have been able to, behind the scenes, recruit our representatives and senators to contact TEA and the governor. Senators Nelson and Powell both wrote very nice letters. We also had Representatives Krause and Garin that contacted them. Representative Hancock suggested it would be best if the letter came from Senator Nelson. He did not write a letter on our behalf. We also have some people behind the scenes that are working with the governor and with the commissioner, trying to get them to put in a dual test so that you would qualify as fast growth, either if you were in the top 25% based on percentage growth or the top 25% based on actual enrollment. Because there are some really small districts that have like 100 kids, that went up 6 kids, that 6% growth is putting them in the top 25%. Whereas opposed to come out in Saginaw, which even with the opening of ILT grew well over 400 children, we're not included on that list. The other thing we're trying to get them to do is use current year enrollment. They're going to use current year enrollment for us to receive funding. They need to use current year enrollment to determine fast growth status. We've grown 950 students this year. That would put us well into fast growth status in either category. So right now we're working with the commissioner before he issues the rules. We'll also comment if he has rules that come out. We'll favorable, we'll applaud, and if they're not, we'll solicit additional work. We are also looking at several sideline issues that have come up that really weren't looked at that closely because we were all concentrating on the revenue figure. They have to do with extended year, they have to do with teacher incentive pay, they have to do with the use of and the calculation of compensatory education funds. So there's a lot of areas that they're still up in the air, and we're having to look at internally, talk to our stakeholders, look at it as a leadership team. However, at this point in time, nothing has come forward that has made us uncomfortable with the budget that the board adopted. There's a few things that may come a little negative, there's a few things that may come a little positive, but we've also been fairly conservative in our expense. And I think we're going to have a nice surplus this year in excess of what we anticipated, which will tide us over if in case HB3 does not produce the funding that we want. So at this point, everything's moving the way we want it to. If you have any questions, if you don't have them here, you can contact me at any time.
When do you think some of those issues will be resolved? I mean, is there any timetable, since we're in a budget year, we're trying to figure out if we can pay our bills?
There has been an indication that some of these issues may not be resolved until next summer after the conclusion of school.
Okay.
Gonna find it.
We'll
Any
roll
other
with the
questions?
flow, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is an operations report. Mr. Clete Welch, construction update. Only got like 25 minutes. Is that enough time to do the construction update?
We can get
Is
that
there anything
involved.
that's not being worked on?
We have a few pictures here for Copper Creek, and I kind of changed it up a little bit this month. We did a little 3-month time lapse, basically seeing the building go from ground up and move vertically. So we started, we went back to July, and just have, again, some quick photos with the drone flying over, and you can kind of start to see the walls go up around the cafeteria and the kitchen area. Slabs being poured. The yellow, that is the library located where the gentlemen are putting the rebar in. And then you can see the ICF going up one of the hallways, which is the white foam structure. Another view, that's the same one with a little more ICF going up. And also in the kitchen area, you see the steel start to go up in that. That was in September. Had some good weather, didn't have much rain, and just another view of it. And you go moving up, now you start to see the decking on, and then you see the steel move over to the, that main academic wing that we were looking at earlier. And this is more of the current photograph. You have some windows going in, so the water flowing around there. That's the cafeteria. So all that part of the back end of the building is more shaping up and working to get into the drive. And I think those, that's
We're still on schedule.
still on schedule. You know, we got a break there with a couple months with a very little rain. And then the way they had to restage it and recapture some time, and that's paid off. So we were able to get that. A few more projects that we have, just kind of finishing up there at Boswell. We have the turf projects, the baseball, softball, going through the punch items. And, you see a dramatic difference in what we have over there. The next part of this project, if you see the outside fence, that fence is the original one from probably a decade old. So over time, the balls hit the fence, people run into the fence, it dents, you replace them, but then you have different color variations. There is some money left in this project that we can go ahead and do the baseball, softball, redo the fence within the scope of what we have here. So I think that would be something we'd want to do. If we don't do it now, we'd want to do it in the future, just to tie the whole project. That's the hard thing about a renovation. Once you start, you just start seeing things you didn't see. That'll tie that
We
together.
can put the same kind of fence back up.
It's
that-
an arc
is that
panel,
what-
yes, be very similar. Sure will. And then the poles, if you've ever noticed on the road, they're starting to peel, delaminate, so they'll go back and repaint those, and so from the road, you'll see a different view of that also. So a bigger deal to do, but it'll really tie the whole area back there together. And at Watson High School, we had a little shade structure before they just had these benches out there. They're pretty resourceful at Watson. Some of those benches, I think they recovered them before they went to the auction. So those are some of our older buildings, our older benches, so I think we can get them some benches in there, but they've been pretty resourceful. Then we put the cover over, and I said, well, some of those don't look very good, so maybe we can help them with some outside furniture there also. And just some other progress updates, the shade tennis structures at the two high schools, get the vendor out there to basically delineate where the cables are located so we don't drill into the cables. Design is still going on central office, Burn Creek. We have punch items going along there, and we're working with the athletic department and the campus on the Boswell athletics component, and then we've gone through the one-step, two-step process, and tonight on the agenda we do have a recommendation there to name a high-ranked contractor, highest-ranking contractor. And then punch items on the Creekview Highland project, and same thing with Bryson. Also tonight on the agenda, you have an action item about 308 that'll be on the agenda a little bit later. And tonight we have Huckabee here. We have Gary and Lauren. They're gonna go over some of the pictures and the color scheme. You know, we can turn that around. Looking for Lake Country Elementary, and so Gary's gonna go through that with a little assistance from Lauren, and then after that we'll do the next topic.
Good evening, trustees. Dr. Chadwell, it's good to be back with you again tonight. Do you wanna bring that up? We're gonna run through, as you know, the elementary at Lake Country is a prototype, right? So it's a prototype of Dozier, then Copper Creek, and now this one, number 17. You believe it? So that's kind of fun. And the great thing about the prototype is that you get to utilize the efficiencies of that. And by now, hopefully we've worked through some of the issues at Dozier. We're implementing those things at Copper Creek, and then this one just gets better. So we've had very few changes from Dozier, instructionally and just really the inside of that. And so what changes then is just how that looks in the neighborhoods. And so we'll touch on this briefly. All right, let me roll through this here. Just to refresh your memory on the floor plan, it's a fairly traditional layout. First, with a two-story academic area. On the left-hand side of the plan is your K1 and 2, and on the right-hand side is more public spaces with the gym, the library, cafeteria, kitchen. So, you know, that center spine kind of divides that with a pretty nice open corridor or entryway there. So nothing really has changed from prototype to prototype, which says a lot. Really, it's instructionally, it's still adequate, it's doing its job. And we made a few tweaks on, you know, when they want to move a door, or add a door, move that wall, but really minor things have happened since Dozier. So a couple of things to note here on our color palette. You'll notice all the gray areas, the corridors and stuff is our vinyl tile. So you'll see some of this vinyl tile here. Classrooms will have carpet. It's a district standard carpet. And so you'll see that throughout those prototype elementary schools. And so the accents then you'll see within those classrooms in the paint, and sometimes you hesitate to, they appear like they're equal, and there's gonna be a lot of yellow and a lot of black and black, but that's really from top to bottom. You have the main field color, you just see main field color, and then some accents throughout the building in certain areas. Let's say behind the display case or certain features you want to bring out. So really you go from a main to accent colors there. Similar, I'm going to roll through the second floor here. It's very much the same layout, third, fourth, and fifth. Very much the same. I'll note here some restroom tiles. I don't know if you remember, we've gone with the larger tiles, the 12 by 24 tiles in the restrooms, both on the walls and the floors. So with Clean and his staff, we kind of talked about how easy that is to maintain. If they're bigger tiles, less grout joints, they're just cleaner that way, and it just looks a little bit nicer, really. And we're starting to see that more and more in elementary school campuses, so it's kind of a fun palette there. On the far right-hand side of that color board, you'll notice the brick and the stone. You can see here in in one of the renderings, very much like Copper Creek, but we kind of tried to stay, done some different things with the brick. And really, your main field brick is here, with 2 accent points, and then really on the base of a lot of the areas and columns, you've got some stonework there. Metal roof panels here, and some cast stone pieces as well. So, tried to stay fairly, not neutral necessarily, but in a color palette where you have an elementary school, they decorate a lot, and they put a lot of stuff on the walls and stuff like that. We really don't want the color palette to fight with all that stuff, and it makes it really, really busy. So we try to stay, not neutral necessarily, but a little bit more basic here. So you can see just another shot here, stairwell on the left-hand side, brickwork and accents in between, and some of the cast stone work in the back of that picture there. A couple of shots on the inside, the cafeteria and kitchen, or cafeteria and stage. The rendering really doesn't show that. That's a VCT tile, but again, they're big tiles, so it kind of renders like carpet. It's not carpet, but it is a tile. It's easy to clean, a pretty basic pattern through there, and then you see some of the accent ceilings there. The suspended wood ceiling it just kind of gives it a feature here. Some acoustical properties as well. So kind of a nice feel in the cafeteria there. And then finally, through the main entrance, we notice that's the main entrance in the distance. And as you come in on the right-hand side of that main hallway are the display cases, some accent lighting, and then again that suspended acoustical wood treatment up top. So I feel like it's in line with Copper Creek and Dozier. Really a nice palette there. And then just touch really on this is where we are today. As we move through, really the schedule is for June 2021. We do have some room there to play with that, just in case something happens there, but that's really in general our schedule. So happy to answer any questions you might have on that. This is Lauren Scarborough, our project architect. Sorry, she's responsible for this. Aubrey sends her wishes. She had a conflict, and I think the last thing she said was done.
Gary, I don't think you said this, so forgive me if you did, but we did have a board committee that's looking at the colors as well and provided some suggestions. And so we're taking that input to make modifications to the final.
Yes, sir.
So he did good. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So you said she doesn't have anything to say? You've taken all of her description?
Well, he's answering the questions.
Oh, okay.
No.
She does.
Any questions or anybody want to see anything any closer? Good? All right.
One last thing, just a reminder that the mascot is the Lions, and the colors are Vegas gold and black. So that's some of the theme you see in there too.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have one more topic, that would be the Copper Creek attendance zones. Looking at those, we have sent out our letters to the campuses, and our first meeting, or our meeting is tomorrow night. We will meet at Comanche Springs. We'll take input. We have a presentation. We'll present that. We'll show what we're looking at and why we're looking at what we're looking at, and we'll take their input. And then through either 3x5 card or through discussions, when we talk to the folks there, or they can go to Let's Talk, and bottom line is gather as much information we can and see where we're at. And so we'll start that process tomorrow night.
Have we decided that if board members want to come, there can't be more than 3 of us?
Great.
Right, so
Right.
if anybody's going, we need to kind of let everybody know. So,
Just let Mr. Welch know. And he can-
okay,
Yeah.
Lee, if you get more than 3, let me know.
Pick 'em up.
All right,
Hi, President Nika, members of the board, Dr. Chadwell, I come to you tonight with a request for 2 positions in the area of safety and security. Dr. Baker has worked closely, as you can see, with the Fort Worth Police Department on the increased need for support in the area surrounding Chisholm Trail High School, and that includes Marine Creek Middle School. We opened this year, we had an initial enrollment projection of 950 at Marine Creek. We're over 1,000 and continuing to grow. And so we really would like to see 2 additional safety and security specialists support the area, Chisholm Trail High School and Marine Creek Middle School. As I wrote in my notes to you, the safety and security specialists have had a positive impact on campuses. And so just their presence, their relationship building has really made a big impact, and we're really feeling the need to increase that. And we are recommending the report is a report for information purposes, but I am requesting your consideration of these positions for action tonight, just so that we could get those positions in place.
Dr. Dawkins, one thing, just last week in our Student Voice group that Dr. Parker and her team led, that was actually mentioned by our students, that their safety is directly affected by having the specialists that are working on the campuses, and they felt very positive about that. And they felt very positive about the fact that they develop relationships, they know the students, as well as, of course, monitoring and keeping them safe. So I thought that was good, because for kids to actually acknowledge people that are catching them do things, that they probably shouldn't be doing was pretty good.
They're
Yeah.
providing guidance.
So I thought that was good. Thought that was really good, but also a testament. Dr. Baker, he's done an outstanding job selecting individuals that have both parts of making sure our campuses are safe, but also knowing that we're a school, and making sure that the right people are in those positions. So he's done a great job with recruiting the right people.
And they're helping, not only in the morning, but they're helping at our evening events as well. And so really they're supporting a broad time span.
Board, as you know, we don't like to bring a report into action unless under certain circumstances. In this case, related to safety security, it is in both parts of the meeting tonight. The second report is not, but this one is. So just
it's action item B, I believe. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Parker? Additional campus-based behavior support staffing.
Yes, I'm on page 46 through 48 in the board book, and I just want to thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate all of you. But as you're aware from board updates, we have been looking at ways to help support our campuses in the increased needs and behavior. And so we've come up with a plan that is piloted, we piloted actually with our Aspiration Initiative, grant funded through the United Way at the high school level for the secondary campuses. And then what Dr. Arnold has implemented at Lake Point has been quite successful with turnaround in student behavior. So I'm coming to you tonight for consideration of 6 personnel spots, which would include 3 professionals and then 3 paraprofessionals to support programs at 1 high school, 1 middle school, and, 1 high school, 2 middle schools, and 3 elementaries. There, got it out. So 6 additional professional and 6 paras to support that. I totally cut that in half. We feel like our program has, with the pilots that we have done, will be successful. We're eager to get started. We're asking for no action tonight, but we will bring this for action in November. Do you have any
Coming
questions?
from compensatory.
It's all coming from compensatory ed money.
And we did receive additional compensatory funds that were above the projection that covers this, so there's no other program that's being taken from that was already identified through that area. These are funds that we are able to spend for this purpose.
And must spend 55% of them on at-risk children, and all of the children in these programs are at risk.
All right, thank you. Dr. Baker, 1920 Saginaw Police Department Memorandum of Understanding.
It's great to see you, each of you. I want to give a report. This report is going to be pretty typical. If you've heard previous year's reports on the interlocal or the mutual memorandum of understanding. But then there'll be an additional new portion that I'll bring to your attention. Saginaw, the city has agreed to continue to support us with 3 SROs at our 2 middle schools, Wayside and Highland, and then at Saginaw High School for the 3rd. Last year, we ended the year, actually, we started the year with 3 crossing guards. Mid-year, the city absorbed the cost of 1 extra crossing guard at High Country. And so we're going to begin this year with 4. We're being asked to support them, pay half the salary for 4 of their crossing guards, or 4 of our crossing guards. And then, of course, we have 1 supervising sergeant that will oversee the program. So for the most part, we pay half of the SRO cost and 10% of that supervising sergeant. This reflects about a 6.2% increase from last year. Now, that's the more typical portion of the report. The newer portion of the report is a reference to legislative changes that have come this past year. Senate Bill 1707 ensures that we as a school district, you as a board, do not assign any administrative duties to SROs. Now, that is not so much of a new concept. It's an old concept, but they now are requiring that we put a list of all of those duties for the SRO in our handbook, in our student code of conduct, and any other of our major publications, district improvement plan, et cetera. TASB is to come out with an update. It's supposed to be due here this month, so we're waiting on it. Hopefully tomorrow we will receive that. And in that update, there will be a list of some suggested duties that we can utilize. So in the contract, you'll see in section 2 that it speaks to that when we do get that list, that will be a part of this contract.
Do they have any kind of list now, Dr. Baker? Any kind of,
Yeah.
is it written or is it just understood?
Well, yeah, I think it is for the most part understood. The city or the police department has the responsibilities of those SROs, and we can certainly utilize that as a little bit of a guideline. But yeah, it's going to be typical police duties. The issue came into play when around Texas, a school district there was an officer who went a little too far in some actions. And so legislation has responded with, we really want to show these are the duties and these are not. And so, but yeah, there is a list. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Sorry, Megan. Pick up with you. Okay. It is currently 5:58 p.m. on October 28th, 2019. This board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, 551.071, which is purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney, which is to consider the proposed termination for convenience of contract with 308 Construction. 551.072, purpose of deliberating the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, purpose of deliberating the appointment, employment, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of public officer or employee. 551.075, for the purpose of deliberating regarding the deployment of specific occasions for implementation of security. And 551.082, considering discipline of a public school child or complaint against personnel. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District. The board is reconvening the public meeting on October 28, 2019 at 7:05 p.m. and now consider the subject set forth in the posted agenda. Welcome everybody to our meeting, and we have Creekview Middle School, Ms. A, to lead us off.
Good evening. We are proud to bring some students with us this evening from Creekview, some of our student leaders. We have Lauren Gayona. She's an 8th grader. Mother Heather Gayona is here this evening. Lauren is very involved on our campus, as is Sarah Batista. Sarah is also an 8th grader, involved in multiple activities. All these students are in pre-AP classes, participate in various activities. We have Hartley Weaver, 7th grader. Her mother, Amber Weaver, is here with her this evening. She's involved in cheerleading, and they're all pre-AP and academics. And we have Noah Barganier. He is a 7th grader. His dad, Charlie Barganier, is here with him this evening. And he is involved in athletics and academics, and they all do a great job representing our campus. At this time, I'll turn it over to them. Please stand. Just stand right there and say, please turn around, face them. Please stand.
Please stand for the pledges.
Will you pray with me? Dear Lord, thank you for the school year we have had so far, and for the teachers, administrators, and for the staff who work so hard. Thank you for our school board, and please give wisdom and guidance as they make decisions for our school district. Amen.
Thank you, Creekview. Thank you, parents, for coming out with them. Megan, we moving on to action items, right? Yes, sir. Okay. We'll move to the action items. The first is to appoint the 2019-20 Board Naming Committee. And I've had no request of begging to be on this committee, but I did ask the current committee members if they would serve, which is Paige Ring, Tim Dockery, and myself. So that will be the naming committee. We're still working on some items really that's going to work well for us to carry over into another year. So that'll be the committee for 2019-2020. Next is consider approving the 19. Oh, okay.
Do you want a motion?
Sure.
I move we approve Paige Ring, and Steve Newcomb as the board naming committee for the year of 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next, to consider approving the 1920 additional safety and security staffing.
I move we approve the 1920 additional safety and security and staffing as requested and presented.
Second.
Motion by Paige, second by Donna. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next is to award the contract for Boswell High School Athletics Addition and renovations. Mr. Welch.
Yes, we had 6 qualified responses for this project. We did the two-step RFQ process for construction manager at risk for the procurement method. We had a panel of 4 district employees and 2 representatives from VLK look through the qualifications and also the proposals. We went through that. We shortlisted it to 4 vendors. We felt like we had an interview process with them to get to know them a little bit better, to ask them some very specific questions. And then, so we went through that process, and then the following week, on the 22nd, they submitted their fees and so when you do this, when we look at our qualifications and the proposals, there's a total of 100 points, and they're graded on things from experience, technical competence, the ability to perform, and past performance. That was worth 60 points. And then when you look at the price, we had that for 30 points, and then we had the interview process. So we went through that with the shortlisted vendors, and we came up with the highest ranking contractor. That was Buford Thompson.
Questions on that process, or Chair will then entertain a motion to, the recommendation is listed on page 153.
I move to enter into negotiations for the contract for Boswell High School athletics additions and renovations with the highest ranking contractor, Buford Thomas Company. And in the event the district is unsuccessful in negotiating the contract with Buford Thompson Company, the board authorizes the administration to cease negotiations and move to the next highest ranking contractor or contractors until a contract can be successfully negotiated.
Second.
Motion by Marilyn, second by Liz. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Clete. Next action item is to consider the proposed termination for convenience of contract with 308 Construction. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb, board members, and Dr. Chadwell. We do come to you this evening with a recommendation or request to consider the proposed termination of the contract with 308 Construction, something we discussed earlier this evening, and we would just like your approval on that. If you have any questions, I can address those as well.
I make a motion that the district terminate its construction contract with 308 Construction LLC for convenience, and direct the administration to give the required notice to 308 Construction under the terms of contract.
Motion by Tim, second by Liz. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. I do understand that the attorney has, our attorney has been talking to y'all's ongoing and even into today, so I encourage that to continue and we get something worked out on the invoices. Thank you. Next, we move back to the reports that we were discussing in the 5 o'clock session. Lincoln, I believe we were up to you.
So I have a very quick and very fun update on our Gold Card program. This is our annual Gold Card update. We're on page 57 of your board book if you're following along there. So just some quick facts about our Gold Card program. It is offered free to our residents age 55 and older and any EMS ISD retiree. They get free admittance to our school-sponsored programs, varsity school-sponsored programs, and then our middle school programs as well. Athletics, fine arts, and that applies to any EMS ISD campus. And it's all activities, not just varsity events, so your JV events as well, but things like Bass Hall, and there are some certain exceptions to that. But anything hosted here at home, we're happy to have our Gold Card members come. They also get discounted lunchroom prices. And of course, we have our ever popular annual Gold Card Appreciation Luncheon. So we are super excited about our numbers this year. Some of you were there, so don't spill the beans, Ms. Hatley, but and Mr. Bose. But we have a record number of Gold Card members this year. Any guesses? Any ideas? You saw the board report.
Somewhere around 2,000.
This is the largest membership since our program inception. We have 2,028 members as of October 8th, and we're continuing to add members every week. So this is a super highly popular program amongst our community. And you can also see that we have membership representing not just here locally, but we've got Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and even over into Arizona. So grandmas, grandpas, family members are all participating and enjoying the experience that we can provide them here through our athletic and fine arts activities. So we're super excited about this growth. More than 240 members last year. That number 240 was also important to us because that was the number that we hit this year for an all-time high at our annual Gold Card Luncheon. We were a packed house at the Hollenstein Career and Technology Center. Our theme this year was A Time to Gather. Dr. Chadwell delivered our keynote, but we also had some presentations from athletics and fine arts. Our Education Foundation was represented, and we also asked some of our volunteers to kind of share their experiences so that we could have people tell them what they could participate in as well to try to encourage involvement there. Our retired school educators were available and on site there talking to folks. And it was catered by our HCTC Culinary Arts program. It was a fantastic lunch as usual. Our Boswell Jazz Combo was there. And of course, they never walk away empty-handed. We always give them door prizes. These are just a couple of pictures. I want to point out the one kind of in the middle, the square one. That's our security specialist, Tim, over at the HCTC providing door-to-door service. So that parking lot gets awful long sometimes for even the most spry of us. And so that cart was a super big help that day. We had great weather and we had a lot of fun. So there's a few more pictures of our speakers, our students that were serving, and our students that were performing. In addition to our annual Gold Card Luncheon, we try to connect with our Gold Card members year-round. We have started sending them our EMS Proud Community magazine, and of course, as you've seen, that has upcoming events that are happening around the district, schedules of athletics and fine arts, special news and announcements, and just kind of a glimpse into the programs that they're continuing to support when they come out and support our kids and our teachers. They also get appreciation nights at athletic events, and our kids write them thank you cards and appreciate them for coming. And so we really try to engage this group. They're such a supportive, happy group. This program is managed by the communications department, but we all know that they're here for Sheila Irwin. They all come for Sheila. They love her, and she does a fantastic job. And so we just want to thank you for continuing to support this program, and we look forward to continuing to grow it. Any questions?
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you.
More the better.
That's what we say.
That's right. All right, next is the 18-19 advanced placement results and dual credit report. Lori Mabry. Welcome.
Okay, good evening, President Newcomb, members of the board, and Superintendent Chadwell. My name is Lori Mabry, and I'm the Advanced Academics Coordinator. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2018-19 Advanced Placement and Dual Credit results to you this evening. This data is reported by College Board late in the summer, and my report starts on page 65. First thing I wanted to do was explain how advanced placement and dual credit goes hand in hand with Aspire 2022 with Strategy 4 and Strategy 5. Tonight, we're going to be discussing several things: participation, including both advanced placement and dual credit, the performance and celebrations of AP and dual credit growth, the areas for growth, and the action plan for the future. First thing is the middle school participation rates. We have it listed by middle school campuses. What you have, for example, with Creekview Middle School, the enrollment number is 13, so 13 students were enrolled. 13 students took the test and a participation rate of 100%. And that final column is what I want to point out on this particular slide because it is 100% at all of our middle schools. In middle school, they can take the AP Spanish Language and Culture in 8th grade. This is our AP participation rates in our 7 content areas that AP covers. And what you have is the exact same as the last one. You have the enrollment number, the number tested, and then the participation rate for last year.
The participation rate for all of our AP content was 63%, and the year before it was 58%, so it is growing. And this is representative of our district participation. The next thing we have is our participation test rates, the content area by campus. So if you go down to the bottom, you see that for overall, we had 2,472 last year. And one of the things I wanted to point out was world languages in the district number over to the right, that is the middle school 77. The next piece of participation we're going to discuss is dual credit. Dual credit is the college and career military readiness, and this is one of our overall things for students. The dual credit growth is pretty astounding overall. English 3, for example, you see Boswell had 205 students, and all the way across to the district having 590 students last year. The year before, they had 350. That is a growth of 240 students in 1 year. Overall, we had 1,356 students participate in dual credit. From the year before, it was 933, which is a growth of 423 students. In the last 2 years, we have grown 423 students, and the year before was 562 students. So basically 1,000 students in 2 years are now taking dual credit, and that includes summer numbers overall. Moving into performance. This is our AP district score summary. What this is the total number of 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s in 2018 and 2019. The 2019 numbers are all green because all of those numbers are up from the year before. 3s, 4s, and 5s are passing according to AP, and a focus area for us as a district are moving the numbers of 2s into 3s. That's where we see an opportunity for growth overall. This is the AP score distribution by campus. What you have are the 3 high schools, Boswell, Chisholm Trail, and Saginaw. You have 1s is red, 2s is pink, 3s is aqua, 4s is light blue, and 5s is dark blue. College Board considers AP exam scores to be a predictor of college performance. So a 5, if a student scored a 5 on a test, then they're considered to be extremely well qualified. A 4 is very well qualified, and a 3 is qualified. The AP exam scores are a weighted combination of student scores on the multiple choice section and the free response section. And what we're hoping for is next year you will see a lot less red and a whole lot more blue on this particular slide. The district mean scores. The district mean score was a 2.6. The Texas mean, all of the students that are in AP in the state of Texas got a 2.87. And the global mean is all of the international and national testers, AP testers, and that's a 3.06. And we have more specific slides that will make more sense of those numbers in just a moment. This is a way of looking at the mean scores per campus with the 3 different high schools. Boswell's blue, Chisholm Trail's purple, Saginaw's red, and what you have is all the content areas, and then you have a yellow line for the Texas score and a green line for the the national score, global score. Then we have the AP mean scores by campus. This is an average of all AP courses taken, and when you look at this, we are closing the gap with the Texas mean. We're getting closer and closer to the Texas mean overall. In middle school AP scores, the mean was a 3.24, which is over the state mean and is getting closer to the global mean. On this particular slide, what you have are the different middle schools and what their scores were last year. One of the things I want to really point out is Prairie Vista went from 2.69 in 2018 to a 3.25 in 2019. Great scores. This particular slide has a lot of information on it. Please notice the number of areas above state and growing towards global. Any of the scores that are green are above the global. So for English, Boswell High School has a 2.70, which is above global and above state. If you look then at Chisholm Trail and Saginaw, they both have 2.50, which is above the state. So English, all three high schools had a score above the state and closing in on global. Notice that Chisholm Trail going up and down has one of the content areas in black and the rest of them are above the state. Saginaw has 5 out of 7 that are above the state. And notice when you're looking at the contents, when you look at the 3 first columns, 6 out of the 7 content areas had 2 out of the 3 high schools above the state mean. So overall, we're doing really well. This is Boswell High School. Boswell is in blue. This is the percentage of total AP students with scores of 3+. So in 2014, Boswell had 53%, and in 2019, Boswell had 61%. So they have positive growth, and all of this is with an increase in participation. This next one is Chisholm Trail. Chisholm Trail is purple, the state is gold, and global is white. If you notice, Chisholm Trail is growth overall from 2014 with 25% to 2019 with 54%. This is Saginaw High School. Saginaw High School from 2015 to 2018 maintained growth, and then they had a slight dip in 2019. Saginaw High School is aware of this and has action plans put in place. We will be looking at these action plans later. Then we move from the schools into district trends. English in 2019 had a 2.60, which is above the state and just below global. Science had a 2.79, which is above the state. Math had a 2.90, which is above last year and getting closer to the state. Social studies had a 2.64, which is growing and is above state. And then in fine arts had a 3.64, which is their highest score they've had, and it is above state and it is above global and is definitely a celebration. We also want to feature the 4 AP awards this year. The first AP award is the AP Scholar Award. This is granted to students who receive scores of 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. So in 2015, we had 123 students earn an AP Scholar, and in 2019, 179 students did. As I go through the rest of these awards, I want you to pay close attention to the bottom criteria. On each one of the next awards, it gets more and more rigorous. So an AP Scholar with honor, it's granted to students who receive an average score of at least 3.25 on all AP exams taken and exams of 3 or higher on 4 or more of those exams. So in 2015, we had 25 students with AP Scholar, and in 2019, we had 28 students. Wrong way, sorry. AP Scholar with distinction, this is granted to students who receive an average score of at least 3.5 on all AP exams taken and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more of these exams. In 2015, we had 32 students, and in 2019, we had 56 students. The last award is the National AP Award, AP Scholars Award. It's granted to all students in the United States who receive an average score of at least 4 on all AP exams taken and scores of 4 or higher on 8 or more of these exams. In 2015, we had 1 student, and in 2019, we had 12 students. Some of the celebrations that all of this data, that we see in this data, AP Capstone Research had its first class for the first time last year. Out of a total of 7 students in research, 5 of them earned the AP Capstone Diploma. Those 5 students were the 5 students in Casey Gauze's class at Boswell High School, so all 5 of them received the AP Diploma. An 11th grader at Boswell received 5 5s on her AP tests. A 12th grader at Chisholm Trail received 6 5s on his AP tests. A 12th grader at Saginaw received 7 5s on his AP test, and he was the salutatorian. The fine arts mean exceeded the state and global mean, and middle school participation was 100%. Areas for growth. Some of the areas we want to work on, we're going to monitor participation rates. We're going to increase the training and support of AP teachers. We're going to move from 1s and 2s into more 3s and 4s. and we're going to work on advisement and placement. So what is our action plan to do those things? There are 3 action plans that we are putting in place this year. The first one is fewer 1s and 2s. We're going to do this by implementing personal progress checks with Fidelity and creating study exam incentives. The second one is we're going to increase communication between our district, students, and parents on advisement. All 3 high schools are doing advanced academic nights this year. And the third one is we're creating an AP Summit to further our training and support of AP teachers. And we end with what we believe in. This is representative of our beliefs and our commitment to continuous improvement and growth in our data. I would like to thank our representatives from the 3 high schools, Principal Micah Davis from Boswell, Principal Walter Behringer from Chisholm Trail, and Principal Karen Presley from Saginaw High School for supporting our students, because it takes all of us to commit to this work. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for your report. We appreciate the progress report and look forward to better things in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Proud all our principals are sitting right there side by side. I looked out there and saw that. There they are, shoulder to shoulder. Dr. Barnes, you're all anxious to get going on this one, I can tell.
Of course.
All right, student transfer policy update.
Got it in the
No
night
one in
on
here
a
for that, huh?
fantastic note. Kirk, are you gonna pull that up?
Magic.
Yeah, something's happening. Anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight with each of you. Tonight we are going to take a look at the recommendations from our committee for our student transfers. Just a reminder, it was the focus of our committee is that we continue our focus on a system of choice for many of our students. And our purpose was to review our current practices and how they impact many of our different programs from our extracurricular, also including class sizes, campus staffing, and so forth. The committee did determine that board policy changes should be made in regards to student eligibility for transfers to the district's high school athletic programs only. We found that that was the key piece of the need. To bring this a little bit more clarity to this, we decided to break it down into our 4 student groups. First, we have students that do live within our district. These are in-district students. We then also have out-of-district students, a student who lives outside of the EMS ISD attendance zone, but who still attend. We have our intra-district employee's child, and that is a student whose parent is an employee that lives within the EMS ISD attendance zone. And then we have our inter-district employee's child, and that is a child of a parent who is an employee that lives outside of our zones. So these are the 4 categories that we will be focusing in on. What you will also notice is due to the amount of changes that we provided with our policies, normally we do give you marked up copies of those policies, but we found that once that was done, it was very convoluted and hard to understand. So we did provide you what the policy would look like in hand, but a little bit of a difference with the presentation. I put the changes in red. So by all means, if you would prefer to have a marked up copy of the policy, please just let me know and I'll be glad to get that for you. The recommendation to the board is for our in-district students. These are for all students that live within our district. Is that our students who reside in the district may have the option to request a transfer to an open campus K through 12th grade. So still allow for that choice to take place. But if a student at the high school level is on a transfer, they shall not be able to participate in a high school athletic program. There are some scenarios where we do have a student that no longer lives in our district but is still allowed. This practice has not changed, but what has been added to the policy Again, this mainly deals with students who moves out of the district in the middle of a semester, and also a junior that's going into their senior years, that they would still be able to remain within our district without penalty of a tuition. But their participation in UIL activities would be based solely on UIL eligibility and their regulations. For an inter-district employee's child, again, this is a child whose parent is an employee, that they do not live in the district. Again, current policy would still stay the same, that they would be allowed to ask for a transfer to an open campus. The changes for the recommendation is this. If a student wants to participate in a high school athletic program, he or she shall declare their high school in the 7th grade or upon employment if the student is in the 8th through 12th grade. If a high school employee transfers to another high school campus, that employee may request a transfer for his or her child to the campus that they are employed on. Varsity eligibility will be determined by UIL rules. For our intra-district students, again, policy would still remain the same, that an employee who resides in the district may request a transfer. If the student wants to participate in a high school athletic program, once again, they would declare when they're in the 7th grade, or again, if their parent becomes an employee, after that, it would be any time upon employment if the child is between the grades of 8th and 12th grade. If a high school employee transfers to another high school, the employee may request a transfer for his or her child to that campus. Once again, varsity eligibility will be determined by the UIL rules. At this point in time, are there any questions?
Any idea how many transfer requests? What do we have? A couple, about 2,000 maybe? Is that about right? Do you,
Say again?
each year, how many transfer requests do we have?
On average, Ms. Johnson?
Do you have any idea what this might, you anticipate this will decrease that number a lot, right? Or do you anticipate it'll
Well,
increase?
it's 2,000 transfers K through 12, and
Okay.
so we're really talking about secondary, maybe starting in middle school, if people decide at that point, but definitely high school. And then it's only those involved in athletics, so that percentage goes down. I think it's 33% of our students are involved in athletic programs at the high school level. That number goes down when you get to varsity. And so on the number, don't have a concrete number, but it's probably a couple.
You sent us a report, though, with last year's
Right, with
transfers,
last
and it's
year's.
a very small number.
It was a small
number.
Yeah. And some of those were employees on there, you pulled those out. So.
The part that says follows the UIL rules, is that what we're doing now anyway, or are we not following UIL rules where it said?
But believe me, we follow UIL rules.
We will continue to follow UIL.
Yeah, we do.
We
Now-
exceed them.
You're spelling it out because.
We do. But we put that in there because when a employee may transfer to another campus, and they bring their kid with them, then they still have to go through a parent transfer waiver. So just because your kid can go with you to that campus, that doesn't always mean that you are eligible for participation. They have to go through a process that goes to Austin, and a lot of times they do allow those things, but that doesn't guarantee.
But you're also spelling it out because we'll be making it more strict for a non-employee child.
Right.
Yes.
And also a
So there'll be a
non-high school
difference.
employee's child. So as it stands, it's only high school employees that can transfer. And we put that in there because there's very strong limitations, like you said. Just because you go doesn't mean that you get to actually participate.
Yeah.
We want to make that clear that we're going, in one area, we're going to supersede the UIL. In another area, we're going to rely on the UIL for approval if it is allowed.
And so now, the UIL would have them wait a year, typically,
correct.
right? And this would be, they'd just be out for all of high school?
Correct. If they are on a transfer and they want to participate in athletics, they would need to remain at their home zoned campus.
So how do
Unless
we
they are an
handle?
employee.
Okay, so how do we handle transfers for, I saw that there's a clause for violent crimes, but what about like a bullying situation that wouldn't be considered a violent crime?
Bullying is, under the policy as it's written right now, would not be an exception. It would only be those that have been criminally charged, such as the Title V offenses. And so there was a lot of discussion on bullying. We do, as you know, we spend a lot, I'm sure our principals can attest, we spend a lot of times on bullying investigations. And in the end, we determined that that was not the best choice for us, is to include those. Frankly, one of the concerns was on false reports of bullying in order for people to receive a transfer, to falsely claim a bullying so that they could get that. We believe we've had that before. And in the case
But
of
do
the
we believe we've had the other way too, where somebody was legitimately bullied? And that's what I'm concerned about, a legitimate bully situation where what's clearly in the best interest of the children involved would be for them not to be at the same campus, and to avoid a bully, they have to choose not to be in athletics.
That could be the case, but just understanding that as we look at this, and I'm happy for the principals to say anything they'd like to say, we do deal with a number of accusations. The word bullying, if everyone in this room were to write down what they define bullying to be, I would bet most people wouldn't meet the definition, the legal standard. We use this term a lot. And so out of every bullying investigation, I don't have the percentages, but most of them are something else. And it may be inappropriate and we have to deal with it, but it doesn't fall under bullying. And so this is a concern for us, that people would simply use this measure in order to receive a transfer that they wanted. In the case of the Title V, those are determined by police, and so those are easier to measure because there's either a charge or there's not. The other has a tremendous amount of gray in it, and I understand what you're saying, and certainly I'm sensitive to those factors, but the numbers that we're talking about are relatively small because, once again, how many of the students are actually involved with extracurricular? You know, you put that number on top of it, it's a relatively small number. But I understand what you're saying. Can't deny that there's not bullying situations that we've determined, and that
I'm just concerned about a policy that doesn't allow us the flexibility to do the right thing in a particular situation, which I could see this potentially having the process to do.
And they can always move. I'm not bullying people, but I mean, students, other good, want to play over there, go move, find a house and move into it.
Well, and it's also, if not the victim, but the perpetrator has the ability to be transferred to another campus. So it's not necessarily the victim that always has to be transferred.
Correct.
It could be the individual that's
Correct.
choosing not to do what's right.
And that's not something under the bullying as well. I mean, that can be determined by policy, if that was the outcome, is if we move the person who bullied.
Yeah, we already have guidelines on that, don't we, who
Correct.
might have to move in those situations, yeah.
We do.
And I've included that in your packet.
All right. Thank you for the report. I assume that will come back as an action item at the next meeting, and any input could be communicated out between now and then.
Yes, sir, and under the alternatives that were in your packet, the one thing I do want to call your attention to is timeline, which was the third one, which is on page 112. As the policy is being recommended, it would go into effect for the 2021 school year. If the board so chose to make that, that would be this year's 8th graders. So one of the questions that had come up to me was the timeline for those that would choose to, if knowing this, they may make other decisions, such as moving, something like that. So given the timeline in order to do that. So just wanted to bring that to your attention as far as timeline. So what I'm hearing the board say is it would be enacted for 2021, unless y'all had a different thought on that.
Okay. One last thing that I would like to bring to your attention, it was brought to my attention this evening, that in FDA local, where it says proposed draft for October 28, 19, mainly down right where it says non-resident employees and or transportation provider employees, there's a paragraph that says transfer agreements. That is something that would also be going into FDB local as well, so then that way all children are treated the same. Any questions?
do want to thank the committee. I know we have several members that were here. If you're on the committee, if you just raise your hand for a second, so we know who you are. So there were a good number of people that were involved with this and some that weren't able to be here tonight. So I appreciate that. This was not an easy process. And one thing that we were very careful to do is to look at what other districts did as well and determine the best course of action for EMS. One thing that we found is in terms of our policy, I think it's very well written for what it's trying to do. And I believe that there's been a lot of thought that's gone into that. So I just want to thank the committee for their efforts in working on this.
I'd be curious to see what the other districts are doing. I think we did ask for that as a report. I
We
don't know
can
if that
send
has
it
to be a
to you.
whole report, but if you,
We
maybe
can
a
send
Friday
that to
update
you.
or something.
Certainly, yes. One thing we found is that the actions and what's written in policy are sometimes different. We made the determination, and this was a decision early on, is some of these districts put things in administrative regulation and do not actually put them in policy. We felt like the weight of policy was important in this case. And so our determination was to put it there, whereas some other districts even have it as procedures, you know, in their
Yes.
working procedures they've done for 5 or 10 years. But if you compare those same districts that you know do not allow transfers and look at their FDA local policy and the FDB, you may not find the language specifically there. You have to find their procedures, their operating procedures. We felt like that's really hard to, when you're dealing with something this important, that it needed to be at the board policy level.
Yeah, we actually researched how many other districts. And what we found is that there was policy, but definitely their practices were very stringent, very similar to what we were doing.
We can provide that to you. We'll send it to you.
Thank you. I'll echo the thanks to the committee for their work on this. We appreciate it very much. Next, that concludes our report. We'll move to the routine monthly reports. Any questions on those? Hearing none, we'll move to the review of the 19 board planning calendar. Dr. Chadwell?
Yes, sir. Page 194 of your packet, we have the demographic report at the next meeting. We also have the district improvement plan and campus improvement plans. I believe we're going to provide those on jump drives again. Is that right, Dr. Parker? Okay. If that's okay with you.
And I will get them hard copies if you'd like a hard copy.
Okay, very good. We also have the SRO agreement, we hope, with the city of Fort Worth. We know that Dr. Baker is working with them, and we're hopeful that that will be in November if we can get that from Fort Worth. We also have the school calendar proposal that Dr. Barnes has been working on, as well as new courses for middle schools and high schools. You'll see that there's not really that many more courses being recommended. I reviewed the list today. You'll see the number, and you'll see a lot, but a lot of them are being renamed like career and technology courses to be in alignment with the state requirements. The rest are some that like ASL 2, 3, and 4, which we just offered the first level this year. And you can see the other items there. We do have one item that was mentioned by a speaker earlier, which is about the act on election for members of the board of directors for TAD. So as I receive recommendations, I'll email those to you so you have that information before that meeting. And we also have, we're hoping to have the action item act on naming architect of record for Eagle Mountain High School. So Mr. Welch is working on that. Do you think it'll be by November or December?
Which December?
Okay. Okay, so as he said, we'll move that one to December. That's it.
All right, that moves us to the consent agenda for approval.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Tim. Who seconded it? Paige, I'm sorry. I heard the voice, but I didn't turn my head. And second by Paige. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carries 7-0. I don't really have any announcements other than Paige is going to get with you on sending out evaluation information back to her so we can keep on our timeline so that we're ready for the meeting in November. So Paige will be getting with you soon. Dr. Chapel?
Yes, one do-over from the monthly calendar. As you'll notice that we have the transfer policy under consent agenda. I just wanted to bring your attention to that you feel comfortable that could come back under consent, or do you want that to come back as an action item? It's fine.
Consent seems to be fine.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, on page 229 of your packet, we have a few things coming up on November the 8th between the first and second quarters at the Boswell football game. We have recognition for inductees for the Hall of Fame. We also, as mentioned earlier by Mr. Newcomb, special board meeting on November 21st for evaluation. And also want to bring your attention to the holiday open house scheduled for December 18th in this room. This room's getting a lot smaller every year, so there's a lot of people. We still want to try to keep to this room as long as possible, so we're really looking forward to that as well. That's all I have.
All right. Seeing that there's no further business to come before this board, the chair will entertain a motion we adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Motion by Donna, second by Marilyn.